Listeners, welcome back to Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller, returning back from Alaska. I made it back in, actually last Friday, came in on the red eye, very red eye. I did fall asleep for a little bit, but it's always difficult for me on an airplane to fall asleep. I don't know, it's just enough going on, I guess, in my own head and environment around me that I'm like, I don't know if I can get to sleep. But there was some folks that I attended with the conference on there, and so that was enjoyable to at least say hi as I walk back to the lavatory. But no, it truly was a red eye. We took off out of Anchorage around, let's see, I think it was probably around 9:30 at night their time, and then flight back to the Chicago area. I do love the window seat. I love the window seat so much, and I usually, if it's a shorter flight, will take it. When I was younger, I would always take the window seat. Now that I'm older, I kind of want to control my own destiny to the lavatory, so I take the aisle seat. But I saw the flight attendant when we were going over Canada. They had a little notepad on I guess a notepad on an iPad, notepad. But they were taking it up and down the aisle and telling people there were northern lights outside the left side of the aircraft, which would have been cool to see, but I couldn't see it, so I don't know. What are you going to do? It is what it is. But if, you guys out there, I would be curious to hear what you have to say about it. If you are a window seat person, an aisle seat, and I don't think those weirdos that want a center seat. And you've seen the things out there where people are like, oh, what's this guy doing? And someone picked a middle seat in the back of the plane. It is funny to see. I think I've only on a map, or at least someone that's put it up, seen that once, because center is no good at all. But we'll have some further conversations about that and some other stuff that I have coming up down the road. But today we have a guest, and we have a really, I think, exciting guest, especially if it's someone who's looking to go into the aviation world as a pilot. This person, Nate Ehlers, they have come up with, one, they have an extensive background, but two, they have a program for people that are getting involved in aviation and want to be on the pilot side. So I've looked through it. It's extensive. It's cool. He's obviously going to know way more than I am from just reading it. He invented it. So we're going to get to our conversation with Nate Ehlers, and his expertise will tell us what we've been doing right and maybe doing wrong with flight training. So I think you're all going to enjoy this. We're going off to Nate. Well, Nate, welcome to Destination Aviation.
Thanks, Jeff. Awesome to be here.
No, it's fantastic. I'm really glad. I've been excited for this conversation. I've been talking with some people that I know in the industry about what we're going to talk about today, and I alluded to a little bit of it in the beginning of the podcast. But thank you so much for showing up. You're actually the second person I've had the honor of interviewing in person.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming, because if you want to give me a little bit of background to the listeners of who you are, how you got into the industry. I know you're based here in Chicago, but people love to kind of understand where the guest is coming from a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of to keep what could be a very long story somewhat shorter, manageable. As a young kid, I was one of the ones who wanted to be a pilot. Third grade, my mom says, is when I made the decision and said, that's the job I'm going to do. But I didn't have anyone in the family in the industry, so we didn't really know how to make it happen. And, I read some books growing up on how to become an airline pilot and which way to go there. Going to school, I ended up getting a business degree. The parents said, hey, you've said you wanted to fly, but you've never flown. You don't know you want to do it, so let's get something that you can fall back on in case this whole dream of yours isn't what you expect it to be. So
wow, so you knew in third grade what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Apparently, yep.
Wow.
And I remember I read some technical book called How to Become an Airline Pilot. That was my third grade, light reading on the side.
I love that. I actually, in my office here, right over here, I have a book, How Planes Fly, and it was from my father. And he got it when he was 3 years old. So in 1958, he got that book. And so I always have kept it because it's a short read, but it sounds probably similar to what you read in third grade.
Yeah, this was a little bit of a book, kind of thick and
it was
more
thick.
Technical. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a bit more than a third grader needed for.
Okay, I was gonna say mine's off a bit on 10 years. This is an airplane. This is a shape.
Yeah.
But you were reading text and documents.
Oh yeah, it was entirely unnecessary. But man, I had the bug young.
I love that.
Excited.
So you went from there. You said that your parents said, "Okay, you haven't flown," and at that point, you.
Yeah, maybe get a degree just in case flying isn't what you expect it to be.
Okay.
So I went and got a business degree. I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Love San Luis
Oh
Obispo.
my
A
gosh.
beautiful airport, too.
Amazing airport, amazing place, incredible city.
It is.
Best 5 years of my life.
I love that. Yeah. No, I've had the honor of going there a few times, and it's so beautiful. And I have some friends that moved that way, and what a nice place to go to college.
It's, yeah.
And they have, I think the airport, right, is dedicating, I think there's the newest, is it the Artemis mission with NASA, one of your, I guess from your alma mater, they're leading that expedition with NASA. So they're
awesome.
putting a statue in the airport or something. I was just
cool.
reading
I'm
an
gonna have to
article on
look
it.
that up.
But, you come from good pedigree then at that school in aviation, aerospace.
Yeah. They've got quite the engineering background. Yeah, great school.
So you found yourself in California getting a business degree.
Yep, yeah. Grew up in California for the most part. After being born, not too far. I was born out in Ohio and Michigan, so not too far from here.
Okay, great.
Still have a lot of family out there, but ended up in California, getting the business degree, started taking private pilot lessons while I was in school, got the private knocked out in college, and then, of course, ran out of money real fast. But that just sealed the deal for me. I was going to be a pilot, turned down the full-time internship job I got offered out of school, and went out to Georgia to finish up the rest of the training.
Wow.
And this is kind of where, going back a little bit, I think the bug came from my grandfather, who was a World War II B-29 flight engineer.
Wow.
And great stories, incredible, career in the Air Force, the Army Air Corps and the Air Force, and always looked up to that. And
no, I love. So when you did your flight training, did you do it at San Luis Obispo? Did you do it at your school, or did you do it at a flight school at the local airport? They have a program where you were. Or?
Yeah, I started one summer in the East Bay area.
Okay.
And did a few hours there, and then went back to school, and it was Pigs Can Fly Aviation. I don't know if they're still there or not, but that was the name of the flight school. Got my private knocked out there.
East Bay area, I'm going to be geographically challenged here for a minute. Are you talking about San Francisco Bay, or are you talking?
Yes.
Okay, so I started my flight training at 141 school at Reed Hillview Airport, which is just southeast of San Jose. I don't know, and if you were up more by like Hayward and
Concord.
Oh yeah,
I was in San Ramon, so
okay, gotcha.
Flew out of Concord.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, wow. Was it Pigs Can Fly?
Yeah, that was down in San Luis Obispo. Pigs Can Fly Aviation. Started by a police officer.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
That makes more sense. Sounds a little less offensive. Well, maybe not. It's funny though. Yeah, I like it. I wonder if it's still there.
Yeah,
I'll have to
look it up too.
Right.
It was been a couple years to say the least.
What did you train in?
It was a Cessna 172.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Was it like a 6-pack at that point?
It was, and I remember they were just getting one with a G1000, and it was the coolest thing.
Wow.
And it was still relatively early in the G1000 days, and I remember it was showing up and went out to see it, and I was like, I can't pay for that. No way.
It's funny. I had the same, the flight school I went with was called Tradewinds, I believe, the 141 school.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, and they had, so the first, I had trained before that, and then I didn't have money. I went to school, and I couldn't afford it, so when I got my first kind of real job out in California, I was like, well, maybe I can finally afford to do this. And of course, the introductory flight was in the G1000, but same probably era, because it was like brand new, right? They had just gotten it. And I was like, I can't afford this either. And so they had a Remos, which it's okay if you've never heard of that because it's a unique plane. But it's weird because the claim to fame with it, it's like, oh, well, you could take it apart like a bush plane, right, and put it back together within 4 hours and basically just have it down to the empennage. But it's so fragile, you really can't land it like soft field in the grass or anything. Okay. So I think that's probably why most people haven't heard of them, because I don't really know where the market is for like a Remos. They're like about the size of a 150. But it was the right price point. That I liked.
That matters a lot. When you need a lot of hours.
Yeah. So you went to Georgia. You found yourself in Georgia?
Yeah, exactly. I finished school, had a connection through a family friend who was a part owner of a flight school in Georgia, and just decided, hey, we'll go the civilian route.
Wow. Went
out to Georgia, got the instrument through CFI, knocked out. It was a branch in Athens, Georgia. They had a handful of airports, and it was Falcon Aviation, which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
but another great year, great instructors, great people. Got through the training. It was all done in Diamond aircraft, so got the G1000 experience there.
Yeah,
a little later, and loved it. Got the CFI done, and then went back to California to start instructing.
I love. Now, not back to Pigs Can Fly somewhere else.
Nope, I went down to Southern California. I was living in Orange County and instructing out of the Long Beach Airport.
Okay. Perfect. Well, that's it. So then at that point, you were starting to develop, and I mentioned a little bit as we were getting in the intro, but that's where you started to develop maybe a thought process of how flight training could be improved, or did that come later?
That came later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as I was instructing out there, I actually kind of started getting the military bug.
Oh, okay.
You learn more about it, kind of see the different paths, and
Sure.
that's where I started thinking, man, maybe the military is the way I want to go. So I started looking into that, and that was a process, to say the least. The active duty Air Force recruiter, mid-20s, walked in to talk to them, and was just told, you're too old, can't make it work. I don't understand, but that was the answer.
How old were you at that point?
I was 25, maybe 26. I think I had a little time. I thought I did.
A little bit, right? It sounds to me like you did. Okay, so you got shot down.
Yep. Just 5-minute conversation.
That was it.
I guess that dream's dead. But of course, that wasn't the end. I started talking to the Marines. One of the guys I was instructing was a former Marine F-18 pilot.
Okay.
And he was pushing that path, and they have a guaranteed pilot route if you can get selected. So I was looking into that, talking to recruiters there. Also, that was a lot of work, just trying. I was doing a lot of work, and it was getting lost, and I was showing up places, doors were closed, lights were out, and I was like, man, I'm doing a lot of work here, and no one's helping me get this going. So started talking to the Army. I was talking to everyone.
Yeah.
But long story short, I ended up getting the regional airline job while I was going through that. Said, I'll just take this.
Okay.
And then we'll backtrack in a second to get back to the instructing stuff. But got the regional job, and that's where I met a lot more people in the Guard and Reserve, and kind of started seeing how that path would work. Found a good recruiter out at Wright-Patterson, not too far from here in Dayton.
Yeah.
And that really got the ball rolling. So now, by time I got the test, the AFOQT, and the TBAS out of the way, and got the scores, and got the whole package put together, I was getting pretty tight on time.
Yeah.
For real this time. 30 was the age cutoff for pilots. So got that all in, ended up getting a spot on flying C-17s.
Wow.
So quite a process.
Wow. And with the C-17, was that out of Dayton as well?
It was out of McGuire.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. No, I was just over there with some folks from here because of the museum out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful. I had so much fun there, especially getting on some of the old Air Force ones. They have like the Columbine in there, and Kennedy's. It's a 707. I can't remember.
I can't remember, but I've seen it out there. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It was amazing. So at that point, you were working for a regional airline. Yep, I got picked up by American Eagle.
Okay.
And that's what got me out to Chicago.
Oh, okay. So you were based out of Chicago, and then now you're with Air Force, correct? United States Air Force?
I actually just seperated from the Air Force 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you did? Oh, well, thank you for your service.
I appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate the support.
I guess congratulations. I don't know if that's the right.
It's bittersweet.
Okay.
It's good and bad. The time crunch was getting tough with the airline job, the side business, and the Air Force.
Yeah.
And so I needed to free up some time, and it's definitely tough to walk away from and separate from. You really miss the mission and the guys and being a part of it, but I think it's the right choice.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's interesting because it's probably the point in both of our careers. I have a lot of friends too that, similar route to you, and they're at that point now where it's hard to get everything done, and then the nice thing too is our industry has shifted dramatically over the last couple of decades to have demand for pilots, and it's nice to see. When I probably the same as you timeline wise, when I started out in the industry, the same as everybody, I was like, I want to be a pilot, and the salaries are just atrocious at the time, and nobody was hiring. And, I mean, when you say to yourself like you got picked up, I'm still excited for you because I remember all my friends. You got picked up. All right, fantastic. And it's I know shifted dramatically. I was just talking with a friend, and their son just got picked up by SkyWest, and I think as a first officer, they're starting like 95,000, and it's really cool to see that the profession has shifted into the positive
so much.
You're right.
I think when I got hired, it was 25 and some change an hour.
Yeah.
And I talked to the guys I fly with, and it was way less than that.
Yeah.
And it's changed a lot, and it's great.
Yeah. When I started my career, I worked for a couple airlines doing like ground service and things like that. But one was Midwest and one was Great Lakes Airlines. And Great Lakes would give out stock certificates every Christmas, which I still have. I don't think they have any value. That's long gone at this point.
Yeah.
But I did, I remember even some friends paying, local, regional, maybe 135. I think one was a 121, but paying them to just build time, and they were flying a Caravan or something, and, just trying to build hours. And again, it's nice, we do a lot of engagement with students at high schools and stuff. And
awesome.
It's funny because some of them are so passionate and really want to be in it, and that's really cool to see and hear. And then others, you're like, oh, what do you do? I don't know if I want to be a pilot. I might want to be an influencer. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I wish I had that chance when I was your kid.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
The industry and the job options are changing quickly.
Oh, yeah. No, we're in such a moment of change. But again, a lot of positivities out there. And even, on the general aviation side, because I tell people all the time, the airlines are great. You want to go work with the airlines, like you go be, FlexJet, NetJet. You can be with a 91 operator if you find a good, and depends. I know 91 World is very dependent on the owners and who you're dealing with. But
absolutely.
Sometimes that life can be really good for people too. And so, my day job where I work, we have 9 flight schools. And so it's constantly trying to, if people have even a glimmer of, hey, I would maybe want to be in aviation. It's like, well, now's a great time to be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's so many aggressive, good programs out there. And but you have one of those.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on one of those.
Yeah.
So to get back to that, kind of with the weird start to my aviation, or the unconventional path I've taken between going the civilian way, then going all the way back to the Air Force, starting over, thankfully joining the Air Force Reserve, so I got to keep that civilian job. But while I was instructing, I got my instructing job in 2008, and that was not a great time for flight schools. A lot of doors were closing, hard to get a job. I was very lucky to find one, A, and then B, the flight school I worked for was just outstanding.
Yeah.
And they still exist. They're out in Long Beach, called Angel City Flyers. Outstanding place.
I love that. You go back and visit them at
It's
all?
been a while since I've been back there, but I did when I was joining the Air Force and post-Air Force. I go back.
Right.
And they just keep growing. Every once in a while, I look them up online and got new things going. And
it's
great
funny
place.
going through the industry in 2008 too. I remember being like, that's actually when I went out to California because I was just trying to find a job.
Yeah.
And nobody was hiring. I mean, it was something else, especially on this side of the world. I mean, from really 9/11, and then it just started to compound as you went up to 2008. And so I feel your pain, especially in that year and a couple of years after that.
Oh, yeah.
So you found yourself now you're in Chicago, but back you were saying out in California when you first started being a CFI.
Yep. Got my CFI, was flight instructing out there. And, things were inconsistent to an extent, good and inconsistent. The pay as a flight instructor, they did pay well relative to everyone, especially for the time. But the inconsistency made it tough. So I had a situation in the pattern in Long Beach where the tower's radios went out.
Really?
So with a student on downwind in Long Beach, and the radios just went dead. And I'm like looking around, like, why can't we hear them? We're clicking, talking, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
We're checking our stuff, everything's fine. And I look over at the tower, and you see the green light shining at you. Yeah, I was like, these are real. I didn't think we actually. You read about them, but you never see them. So I got the green light, and I was like, I know what to do. Let's land, and we'll call it a day. So made it pretty easy, but you start thinking, you're like, man, I read about these, I never use them.
Yeah.
If I got the flashing light, or if I got something, would I be 100% sure what to do?
Right.
So I made a little cutout for my knee board that just had the light gun signals on there.
Okay.
And then from there, I was like, well, maybe I need some other stuff in there too. So I started kind of putting together stuff that was tough to remember, you don't use often, or is really important. And I built myself a little reference card.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder if I can sell this. Maybe I can make a couple $100 a month, which back then would have been like, that's
that's multi-millionaire.
Food. Yeah, that's amazing. Right. I'm eating like a king now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're fine. You're living the best life ever.
So I put this IFR VFR reference card together, made a one side for each, and then put it out on the website. And by the time I had it all put together and found a good printer and the paper to print it on and all that, it was getting toward the end of my flight instructing. It was probably summer 2011 or so. So got that all put together, put it on the website, and then threw my CFI lesson plans that I wrote while preparing for my CFI on the website as well to, maybe that'll drive some traffic or at least give something other than just this reference card I've put together out there.
No, I'm actually looking at your reference card right now, and I wonder if either they stole it from you or maybe it is yours, but I do have one that even I fly with to today that looks very similar to this that has I love, the emergency guard, all the stuff that's on here, the light gun signals, as you spoke about. Yep. This even to now, right? Because things like, cruising altitudes and stuff, I say, oh my God, which way am I going? Am I going east? Am I going west?
Yeah, you got to do that.
But I love it. I love it as a quick reference, and this is so well put together. Because it is. You're in the middle of flying, especially if you're like me and you're just flying by yourself or something, or flying with someone who maybe has no experience, and you just want to quickly check yourself. Especially, like you said, for those unique situations. Working at airports, the only time I have seen not the tower, but aircraft radios fail. It happens here maybe, once every couple months.
Sure.
But a lot of times now people try to, if they're low enough, they'll call on the cell phone. But I think it's exactly to, testament to what you have here, that people like, wait, what does that light gun signal mean? Or how do I get into the pattern if I don't have a radio?
Right.
And so, as an airport operator, I've had them put the light on me when I'm out there, and it's kind of, like, what the heck was that? Because sometimes they don't tell you, and you're like, you shining me with something?
Yeah.
But yeah, something like this, so condensed and easy to, just you said, having a knee board pop open, look at. And I like to, this information being static, written out. It's not on an iPad because it should be right there. And I love that it can be right there just to grab that information. So these actually look really cool. And you do sell these on your website too, right?
Yep, I do.
So maybe talk a little bit about what you started.
Yeah.
So that way people can understand a little bit. And I should say, because I get so close on acronyms sometimes, but there are a lot of listeners that aren't in aviation. So you're the expert. But like when I said CFI, Certified Flight Instructor, right? Is that
Yep, exactly.
And then you're going through your training. You started with making a couple $100 a month. You're rich at that point.
Oh, that was the hope. I don't know how long it took to make a couple hundred selling those. But I was, if I could make a couple hundred, that'd be the dream.
I love it though. So did it take off for you? That part of it?
It started slow.
Yeah.
I remember, and so this was kind of the foundation where everything started. Yeah. And I came up with the name, the Backseat Pilot.
Yeah.
And this was the original Backseat Pilot. It was your little backseat helper that if you ever got yourself in a bind or needed that little bit of information, it was right there for you.
I love that name, by the way.
Oh,
when I saw it and I looked at your website, I was like, that's pretty cool. Because
awesome.
Sometimes, right, like you hear backseat driver, but the funny thing about that is, when you're young and you hear somebody say that to you, it's like, oh, that's offensive. I'm a good driver. But as you get older, you're like, no, you were trying to help me. And I love how, at least in my mind, maybe that's not what you did, but in my mind, I was like, oh, like he's the guidance behind you for maybe when you find yourself in a situation that you're trying to get out of.
That was exactly the thought. When
I love it.
Came to me one day, and I was like, "That's the perfect name." And then I looked up the URL, and it was available.
That's perfect.
Yeah, which is that gets harder and harder. You come up with a good name,
I know, right? Yeah, and then if someone does own it, they're like, it's time to pay the piper.
King's ransom for that.
Right, exactly. You're gonna have to sell a lot of these.
Oh
cars,
yeah, yeah.
No, it's great. So you started this under kind of the quest for, they said, condensed information maybe that doesn't come up every day. I know you have things on here like the visibility. I'm looking at VFR because I'm a VFR pilot. I'm not to your level. But this again, all this stuff I love so much. But like for you, you started with the knee boards. So now you got your name.
Yep, got my name, got the reference card, and then I put the CFI lesson plans I wrote for my flight instructor ratings. You know, when you go to take that flight instructor check ride, you've got to have a lesson plan designed for every task in what was then the PTS and is now the ACS, or the practical test standards that lay out the requirements for the test. Now the airman certification standards, same thing, just a new format.
So you started the knee board idea when you were in California, and then, and just so I make sure I got my timeline right here, you left after that American Eagle, and then went in and started flying with the military, and then you started the rest of this when you were building out the website and everything?
So this came just before going to American Eagle.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew you wanted to continue, because a lot of times I'll say, I like my side of the world, I just did my biannual check ride with my flight instructor, and all of them are waiting to get picked up, mostly by the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like with most of them, it's kind of like, yep, this is my time to build hours, get to 1,500, make some money. I don't want to think about it ever again and get out of here. But in your perspective, you're like, I want to continue with my career, but I really enjoyed this aspect of my flight, I guess, career itself.
Yeah.
And you wanted to give back, make it better. Because that, to me, and just at least my perspective, maybe I'm way off in this, but people that I've seen with, a lot of them seem like they do the flight instruction as kind of a means to get to the end, and then they move on to their airline job, and that's kind of it. But for you, you said, now I want to stay invested in both of this. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
And to some extent, I stumbled into this. It wasn't intentional. But I did really enjoy the flight instructing career. A lot of that was the people I worked for in the flight school they set up and how they took care of us.
Yeah.
And they made it really enjoyable.
I love that.
It's amazing how you make it good for the instructors. They'll stick around.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that, it's funny because I have seen, and I was just talking with a friend who recently retired, and they are coming back to be a CFI at one of the schools here. And I've seen that where people get to the end of their career. But I love, especially someone like you with your perspective, it seems like your personality, I just met you, but you seem like you have your personality.
Nice.
And a lot of times that's the unintended barriers into our industry is, either you get someone kind of gruff, or I did my time, I'm out. So at least I love the idea that you're like, hey, we can make this better, and you're still invested in making it better for the next person coming up, next generation of flyer.
Yeah. So what happened there was, when I put the lesson plans I wrote on the website, the idea was maybe they'll drive some traffic, get a little more attention to this reference card. But I found out pretty quickly there was demand for these lessons. And you start thinking about it, it took, and I spent at least 2 months writing these, while also working in the flying and learning to teach and doing all this. And the writing, at least for me, writing these lessons I didn't learn a lot by writing them. I was more just compiling the information, putting it into a Word document, and then moving on to the next one. I got to check all these boxes. I got to get this done. Let's get the information together, and let's get the next one going so I can get to flying, so I can get to teaching, so I can get to the check ride.
Yeah.
And so what I found out is it is a lot of busy work, and by realizing there was demand here, people want to cut that busy work out. And, if you can provide them solid lessons that they can edit as well to make their own, it saves so much time. And if they can cut those 2 months or even a month and a half out and focus on flying, focus on teaching and learning the material, and focus on prepping for the check ride, it's a win-win,
Well, I'll say when, and I appreciate you gave me access to your modules, and I was impressed at how extensive each one of them are. I mean, it really looks like a true roadmap for, VFR, IFR, whatever you're going through in the moment. So I at least can contest from what you have on there. It looks like a solid plan to get someone up in the skies. So the Backseat Pilot, your kind of market for what you're doing with the website, you started, with the knee boards and stuff, but now you have these extensive modules. Is your target audience those flight schools, those CFIs that need a lesson plan, or because I'll be honest, just as a student, as a pilot, or past student, I should say, reading your documents, I was like, wow, this is so helpful to me as a student. But is your target audience any of those groups, or is it predominantly flight school? Here's really a module to get your flight instructors unified and make sure that they're doing the same type of training for all their students, or what is your kind of target audience?
The target is primarily individuals preparing for their CFI.
Okay.
So we've got a handful of lessons set up. So you've got the CFI lessons, the CFII or flight instructor instrument, and then the multi-engine instructor lessons. And so the idea is you have to have those written and corresponding to the appropriate Airman Certification Standards, ACS, for your check ride. So as you're getting ready to take your CFI, grab the CFI lesson plans. The lessons are all done. I've got them in Word, Pages, and PDF format to make it as easy as possible for everyone. They go in and, you start with the fundamentals of instruction, go through those lessons, edit them, and then go through each lesson, edit it as you need to make it your style, fit your procedures, however your teaching style, and then start teaching from it, just to get you fully ready for that CFI check ride. And then when that one's done, you get the CFI instrument lessons, do the same thing with those, get you ready for the instrument instructor check ride.
I love that. Is that, in with them being so extensive, I had the pleasure of switching flight schools from California to Indiana in my career, just naturally how things flew for me. But it went from a 141 to a 61. And with your lesson plans and students kind of across the board. So I should say for people listening, so for me, and I'm going to explain this as someone who's not an expert like you in the CFI world, but 141 was more structured.
Yeah.
The 61 was really it was a flying club that had instructors at it, which I actually enjoyed that experience more. Mm-hmm. I think it fit better with my personality, but probably where would have been more helpful is having your lessons plans in my hands, because they are, one, very well written, but for me looking at, I'm like, oh yeah, like even now, right? Because you go through it, you get your license, and then you do biannual. But yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this, that, and so even now, I was thoroughly enjoying going through the plans. But again, so any of those students, for you take that at any school kind of outfit you're at and apply it to what you're trying to do. Because I did see in there you had private pilot, right, and instrument modules. And
so what I've done over the years is, I started with the CFI lessons, and then I think it was 2017. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but the FAA transitioned the private instrument and commercial check rides from the PTS to the ACS.
Yeah.
And it was just those three to start. And so I wrote some documents that I called the ACS reviews and put them out there, which was a task by task and element by element review of everything in the new ACS. So it just said, task one or element one, task A was whatever. I filled in the answer, pulled some from the CFI lessons I had written, but just kind of made a study guide for the ACS. I think those are more tailored toward the private instrument commercial student. Instructors can use them too to help students and review stuff. So went from the CFI, then added the ACS reviews, and then built some syllabi for. I've currently got the private instrument commercial single engine syllabi, and then a multi-engine add-on as well, and still kind of building stuff out. And then what I did was took the CFI lesson plans and the ACS reviews and incorporated them into the syllabus. So, if you got a lesson on steep turns, it says, hey, flight instructor, reference the steep turns from the CFI lesson plan. Private pilot student or commercial student, reference the ACS steep turns, these tasks and elements, and just kind of pulled everything together with the syllabi. So long term, and what I'm focusing a little more of the work on right now is building more of a complete setup for a flight school, to where they can have the private syllabi. Ground lesson one is we've got a single document, a single slideshow that just goes through everything. Whereas right now you're referencing, CFI lesson 1A and 3C to teach try not to make this too confusing, convoluted, but you're referencing 2 CFI lesson plans to teach 1 private pilot lesson. It gets a little weird and choppy. So cleaning things up, trying to make it more flight school friendly next.
Is that so when you talk about like content fatigue being the number 1 CFI killer and how your module plans are fixing that, is that what you're seeing out there, you know, maybe in your, I know you said you enjoyed when you were a CFI out in California, but is this something that you're seeing as a trend in the industry, that there's not a good module for people to follow, and that's why it's the number 1 killer of people that are not being able to get through a CFI course or any of these, you know, certificates?
Yeah, I think the issue just comes down to the amount of time and effort you got to put in.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, a lot of guys and girls and just people in general start looking at CFI as a stepping stone to get somewhere else. And it's a lot of work to become a CFI. The check ride's not easy. You got a lot of prep to get there. And so once, you know, you see it as a normal stepping stone, you're like, all right, I've knocked out all my ratings. Let's knock out CFI. I'll get that done. I'll get to the airline. And then you realize the mountain of work and the expertise it takes and the requirements to be a legitimate CFI and what the FAA wants from you. Yeah. And when you start putting all the work on your shoulders, that's, I think, what burns people out. And it's all that lessons to design and things to learn. You got to be able to teach it and know it. And if you don't, you got to know where to find it. And it just burns people out.
Do you find at this point that you're still teaching? I know you have the modules, but do you get out and do any work with any local flight schools or anything like that? Or are you now trying to, like in this kind of mentoring role, getting a lot more people than maybe you could individually, and that's part of where you're at right now? Or do you still flight instruct even to this day? Do you do any of that?
My teaching up until 2 weeks ago was in the Air Force. So
okay.
Kind of getting back to that, got on flying C-17s out at McGuire Air Force Base as a reservist. So joined as a reservist, which is kind of a very well-kept secret, the best-kept secret in the industry. Is if you can join the military's Guard and Reserve, it's a night and day difference to active duty.
Wow, okay.
You try to keep this quick and concise, but you can basically apply to any squadron you want. If you get hired there, that's your squadron till you decide to leave or they send you packing, but versus active duty, which will move you every few years or so.
Okay.
So anyway, got out there flying the C-17, did full time as a reservist for about 5 years. Got through my aircraft commander rating, captain equivalent, flying the C-17, flew all over the world. Unbelievable experiences I never thought I'd do.
Wow. Just
great career. And then things started slowing down a bit there, so went back to the airline, started splitting time.
Yeah.
Doing the traditional reserve schedule of, you know, a handful of days a month with the Air Force and the rest with the airline. And then a little later, I ended up getting sent over to instructor school on the C-17. So I got to be the CFI equivalent of a Air Force C-17 pilot.
Obviously it makes sense. You have to. It's just funny to think that.
Yeah, exactly.
But is there a civilian military flight training that you can and can't teach each groups? Is that, you're just talking about you were doing a lot of training within the military. How do you, do you take that and apply that to the civilian side? Are there lessons in that
absolutely.
Or is there also stuff you're like, well, this doesn't really apply?
Yeah, a little of both. I mean, the rules are generally the same.
Yeah.
Big picture, flying's flying, and we operate in a lot of the same rules. But when the military does have a lot of things that don't necessarily transfer over because of the job description on
the
that
nature
side.
of the mission.
The
right?
nature of the mission, yeah.
Seems fair.
Yeah, exactly. But big picture, there was so much of that training, going through UPT or undergraduate pilot training. The Air Force pilot school is about 13 months. And it's an intensive, starting 12 hours a day of in the books or in the airplane, learning all this stuff. There are a lot of lessons you can take from that, and that I've tried to take from that and start applying to the content I've been creating. And then over the years, move into the bigger aircraft and, worldwide experience, flying in and out of places in the Middle East and Africa. And it's not all that necessarily applies, but the big picture concepts are very helpful.
Yeah, I could imagine, some of them. So I have a friend. He used to fly P3s and loved it. And quite honestly, anybody that went the route you did, I've only heard very positive things about the training one that they received and how they use that in their next life. But it's interesting. His schedule was getting tight too, and so now he's switched from the P3s. He's flying drones out of Jacksonville, Florida, and still full flight suit and everything.
Yep. Yeah.
just now it helps better with his schedule, which I guess technology and stuff kind of leads into this. So we have, which I love again because when I showed up here 4 years ago, I was like, I want to get back into flying, and I hadn't flown for a few years. As I showed up like any old student with my brand new sectional, which I still love the smell of.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are turned into wrapping paper now, but showed up with that. My chart supplement. I guess the chart supplement is the AFD now, and my flight instructor, a younger man, was like, what the heck is all this? He's like, they have things like ForeFlight now. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So now I bought ForeFlight, and I have that and the Sentry system anytime I fly. But I always keep my knee board, and I love my knee board. And I love all the information you have here. But with kind of that switching to, AI and aviation training, kind of the tools, myths, hard lines, or should I say hard limits with AI, do you right now, we see things like with Cirrus and stuff. I know some people that train exclusively on Cirruses. I've never flown a Cirrus myself, but I have heard from different flight schools that it may not be the best aircraft to give you the mechanics of maybe like what a Cessna 172 would do. I'm not saying that I know that for sure, but in the idea of AI and things like automatic land now and stuff, how do you look at that with your lessons plans? Are you engaging into that? Is that on kind of your thought process, maybe the next steps in this, or is there a cautionary tale of still using some of the physical stuff we have in front of us along with leaning into some of the technology on the aircraft itself, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, I think I see both sides of what you said.
Yeah.
There is a path forward. It's not an easy one where you can just type a prompt into ChatGPT and it'll spit out a perfect lesson plan.
Right.
But there's a way to make it work that I've been reading a lot and listening to podcasts, taking a class. So trying to figure out the future and how to make it work.
Yeah.
How to blend it with this training. And I think there's a path forward. Right now, what I've seen is when I try to incorporate it, it does a good job at the high level. It'll give you a good overview. It'll get high level concepts right. But if you try to drill down and get into details with it, that's where it really gets lost and starts spitting out incorrect information.
Funny, I was just saying that to somebody the other day, because I will say ChatGPT is the best assistant I've ever had.
Yeah.
But it absolutely has its limitations, and you're right, because if you start really engaging with it on questions, it throws everything completely off, and quite honestly, makes stuff up. And even with this show, a lot of times I'll do if I do a singular show, I don't have the honor of someone like you on, and I'm doing it by myself. And I'll start, compiling my notes and everything, and it will plug in stuff that never happened.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how it just morphs into that. And so that is, somewhat for me the cautionary tale, because when I fly, I'm like, well, I don't want to lose the basic mechanics of being able to control the aircraft myself,
right?
And understand, so when I first started flying, really, there was technology out there, but it was expensive, and it was in probably what you fly in your day job. Like it was, real airplanes. You're saying what I fly isn't real, but it wasn't my style of flying. I saw a picture the other day online, and it made me laugh because it was a football player in full football gear, and he was standing in a stadium watching a football game, and it was like, this is what a private pilot feels when he gets on an airline. I think that sounds about right. That's how, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But, back then I didn't have the technology, at least available to me. And so you did, when you would fly, at the time, you maybe pop, VOR to VOR, flight following, and kind of that connection with air traffic controllers. And, A lot of times when I fly now, especially here around the city or something, and if they're busy, I usually don't do things like flight following because I find that, with ForeFlight and the Sentry system, it's so easy now to navigate.
Oh, yeah.
But I do sometimes shut it off because I want to be able to maintain the skills of, flying the aircraft without some of the technology components. So it's interesting because I wonder sometimes, especially people that are coming through flight training, especially if you're training on a very advanced aircraft. I think you said you were in a 172 with a 6-pack, right?
Right. Yep.
Are they getting the full experience that they should? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough question. Everything's going that direction of satellite based and GPS and, integrating AI into stuff. If that were to fail, I think it would cause a lot of problems.
Right.
It's been so reliable. It's tough to tell people that, hey, you got to learn the other stuff. You got to know how to do the green needles, not just the magenta.
I love that.
But yeah,
I
it
love
is.
that.
I think there's still the foundation should absolutely be there of knowing how to fly and navigate. And
So today, here now, are you captain with United?
not yet. First officer.
First officer.
So yeah, I made that move handful of years ago now.
Okay. And so you're first officer, and thank you, one, for your service, and congratulations on retirement.
Thank you
from the service.
Yeah.
So at this stage with Backseat Pilot, how has it been going for you as far as you're obviously you have a website based on this. You're selling the lesson plans, correct? So people can come onto the website and purchase. Do they get the full everything that you gave me access to, or could they buy individual modules? Or if there's a student out there that's listening to this podcast right now and they're like, yeah, I like what Nate's saying, it's making a lot of sense. What's kind of your recommendation to them to find you, seek you out? What kind of content can they download from the website? That type of thing.
Sure. Backseatpilot.com is the website. Try to keep it simple. And yeah, depending on where you're at, you can buy individual modules, whether, just the private pilot ACS review, just the CFI instrument lesson plans if you're preparing for that, or just a reference card. Or then I put together some packages too. One's the CFI lesson pack, which gives you CFI, CFII, and the MEI lessons. So it kind of knocks out all 3 check ride lesson preps. Or the other package that I sent over you, the whole shebang, I called it. So
I saw that.
Yeah, that also came out in 2011, 12. So I was like, this is just everything. It's the whole shebang, just everything together.
I love that you have a sense of humor about it too, because a lot of times in our industry, I think that's one of the bigger barriers is a lot of times people don't have a sense of humor, and I think it's such a underestimated quality that someone can have, especially on our side of the world, because it's like, oh, there's regulations and there's fence lines and there's TSA, FAA, CBP, you get all these regulatories and then it's cool for someone like you to make it fun but also informative.
Yeah,
and I think that bridges a big gap that we have.
That's the hope is. For, I think, the majority of people going through this, it is a lot of work, but it is a passion. And, we're doing it because we love it. And I have talked to guys who just said, flying looks like a great career, so I decided to become a pilot. Never really had the bug, but it's a good job.
I love that.
But generally, I think the majority of people who are doing this job are very passionate about it, want to enjoy it, and just want to, be better pilots and better instructors. And we should try to make it fun and lighthearted where we can, because it is, like you said, it's very structured. It's very regimented. We have these procedures because they keep people alive. So when we can back off a little, enjoy things, and, make a silly name.
Yeah. And that's, again, that it to me, it resonates much more. And that's kind of the whole idea, even with this podcast is, so many times you see somebody speak in our industry and it sounds like a LinkedIn profile, which nothing wrong with LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn profile and I'll put this show out on it too. But, people want to hear kind of real conversations and real struggles too, as you go through it. And, not everything's perfect. And I love the thought process that you went through it and you said, I think we can make this better.
Yeah.
And so right now, with your you said you're leaning towards potentially developing this for a standardization for a flight school too, if they may want to buy syllabuses for
Hmm.
the students that they're training.
Yeah, I've got a handful of flight schools I work with already that do everything from just provide the lesson plans to their CFI candidates,
Yeah.
just to have them ready and say, hey, we provide Backseat Pilot, you guys are set. And then I've got some flight schools who use the content to teach from as well. And the goal now is just to streamline that, make that more flight school focused instead of CFI focused, and then build off that into hopefully an app and kind of like we were talking with AI, try to start integrating, just making training easier, more fun, and better for everyone.
How do you feel about the market in general right now in aviation? Are you pretty confident with, I know it kind of goes back and forth, pilot shortages, and, the airlines and shifting and capacity, and, Boeing's had issues getting aircraft out the door. You're pretty optimistic about, people, especially someone young, if there's a young Nate out there somewhere who's like, yeah, you know what, that's I like what that Nate's saying. That sounds really cool. You feel pretty good about the industry and people getting into it at, let's say you're 16, 17 years old, maybe you're in a STEM program at a high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. There's always the talk of when it's going to go to pilotless.
Right.
I can't imagine that being that soon because we're not even at single pilot yet.
Right.
So there are gates.
Right.
But big picture, kind of backing up to what's going on right now, there was that huge growth spurt over the last 2021 till the issues Boeing started having, and then things slowed down a bit.
Right.
It looks like, from what I see at United and in the industry, it feels like this is about to start spinning up again. United just announced record hiring next year.
Wow.
Hire more than they've ever hired in any year previously, it sounds. The Boeing's cleaning their plane delivery schedule up and starting to accelerate deliveries again. It's the retirements from the baby boomer generation they're accelerating at United, and I'm not sure how they're doing at American and Delta, but everything I can see right now, knock on wood, let's not jinx anything here, but everything I can see right now is leading to some good movement, a lot of hiring, and then long term, we started hearing rumors about starting to look at single pilot over in Europe, I believe, and that kind of got squashed, and they just said it's too early, the tech's not here yet, we can't do this in a safe, reliable way. So that's kind of off the table for the time.
Yeah, I just was in Alaska at a conference, and of course I did some extracurricular stuff of going up in a beaver. Of course, why wouldn't I do that? But one couple things about it. So we were talking with some folks that are really engrossed into the autonomous flying and own companies that are developing technologies, and they spoke specifically to that. And they said exactly what you did. They said it's just the thing that the airlines, at least from their side, or their customers, maybe not the airlines is the right word, but the manufacturers, especially Airbus, was maybe ways to try to reduce 2 crews on like overseas flights where you switch out. But I agree. I think one, like the kind of mental factor of not having someone like Nate at the front,
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't want that. And then, two, like you said, the technology doesn't really seem to be there. Even with, autonomous like eVTOL flying and stuff, I always tell people, if I see, these electric vertical lift takeoff vehicles going up in a grand scale in places like Brazil and China, where they have less regulations than we do, maybe it's on the horizon. But until I see that, which I haven't,
Right.
usually you go, and it looks like they're doing a lot of really cool stuff. But, also too, it's one of those things with, our industry where, people coming into it, I love the optimism that you're saying, because I too kind of feel that as well, especially here, whether you're working in, the airport side of the world or a traffic controller or you guys up in the sky. I always tell people it's really not been a better time in my career, at least, to be a part of this industry. Right. And I love people being kind of dynamic with the training, because even too when I go up with a flight instructor, because there's some people that have been flying for a while, like me, and you go up and some are like, oh no, like you're gonna tell me what to do. Like I always love going up with a flight instructor because I always learn something new, and you see, especially in my side of the world, a lot of accidents that don't need to happen. And maybe if they had a knee board, or they had some of your lessons that they went through, they wouldn't have found themselves in that spot. So, because we have younger listeners that listen and maybe that aren't a part of the industry, if they are of that age, let's say they're 17, 18, they're deciding what they want to do in life, your recommendation is, would it make sense for them to get modules from you and then go off to start flight training program? Or how would you recommend, even if it's someone later in life who's just a recreation pilot who wants to learn, is this something to get ahead of getting into class, or if they're in class, or how would you say, okay, you're not a pilot, but you want to be a pilot. How does Backseat Pilot fit in at that? Should they get on the website now, engage with it?
Sure. I'd probably supplement it alongside the training, because the documents are still, it's a Word document that goes through each task and element of the ACS. So it's not something that really gently brings you into aviation, at least not yet.
Yeah.
That is the goal. But yeah, right now I'd say once you start training and you're kind of got the footing under you, you're getting that foundation, and you've got your eye looking toward the check ride, that's when the ACS review would help a student start preparing for the check ride and kind of condensing the knowledge into what you should know for the check ride.
If you do the whole shebang, do you do updates to them?
Absolutely, man. That is what I spend all my time doing. Yeah.
They're thoroughly written. I think at least the first, I can't remember the ones after that, but I think the first module was 79 pages. It was something up there. It looked like a lot of pages. I think.
Yeah, they are. The documents as a whole, like the CFI lesson plans, are 500 or 600 pages. They're a little longer than they were because I changed the formatting to make it easier to read and cleaner and look prettier, which I think does help a lot when you're dealing with Word documents and just walls of text.
Right.
But getting the pictures in, spacing it out. So yeah, the CFIs are about 6, and then I've got a extra detailed version of the CFIs.
Okay.
Those were kind of the original ones I wrote, and they're very detailed, pull a lot of information from the handbooks.
So with it being, and I guess with it being a living document, is that if you purchase it, or do you get to go back with you, purchase updates, or how do you handle that when you are updating documents?
So I generally send out updates every month or so, and they're just included.
That's
pay
great.
once,
That's
updates for life.
That's fantastic.
Try not to, try to keep people engaged and happy.
And that's a direct login to your website.
Yeah. So when you buy something, you create an account.
Yep.
With the email you checked out with, you log in with that account, you click the My Digital Content button, and that takes you to your orders. And then so every time I make an update, I will send out an email that just says, this is everything that changed this month. And then you can log back in. The new documents are in the account and just hit download. Long term, the plan is to hopefully, pull this all together. Because right now, you download the documents, then I update them, and you download the new ones. So it's not a perfect system, but creating an app where I can just push the updates to you.
Sure.
And then you've got them right there. You can kind of look at what changed and integrate it into your personal documents, or just say, I don't need that.
Now that makes sense. So, I think the one I was looking at, because obviously the first one I looked at was, I think, Private Pilot. I think that's the one that was 79 pages. I might be off.
That's pretty long as well. It's up in the hundreds as well.
It's up in the hundreds?
ACS
Okay. I don't know what I was looking at then. It was one thorough, needs to be, and I love that. But, well placed out. It's like you could go and find maybe a section you were struggling with. But if you are right now going for it to be a CFI, you get your module. Like if that, we talked a little bit about, I mentioned somebody out there who's never flown. But if you're right now in that process of maybe I want to be a CFI, because you said it's very intensive, that same person could come in, get that module from you, and then start their process. Is that how you would recommend maybe someone out there who's at that point in their career?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, getting orders from people when they're working on their commercial, getting through their commercial and or past it and starting the CFI. And I think there's a couple schools of thought there. One is if you're working on the commercial and you know you're going to go CFI, it doesn't hurt to start prepping early. It just accelerates the timeline. And if the plan is the airlines, everything's seniority based. So the more time you can cut off, the sooner you get the check ride, get instructing, and start making money instead of spending money, because, man, we spend a lot to do this
Right.
to become a pilot.
Yeah.
The better everything goes. But yeah, if you can start working and getting in that CFI mentality while you're working on your commercial check ride, and there's you maybe even start flying a little bit from the right seat as well, get that feeling, get that muscle memory going, and then keep the ball rolling as you go into CFI, or finish the commercial, keep your mind focused on that, and then grab the CFI lesson plans or whichever one you're starting with and jump into that.
I love that. Do you see kind of the future? I know you mentioned, you alluded to a little bit of maybe where you see Backseat Pilot going, but how would you like Backseat Pilot? I don't want to get into your trade secrets, but let's say 5 years down the road, what do you have kind of thoughts of where you would like to see Backseat Pilot at as an organization?
Yeah, I'd like to grow the flight school side, which I think kind of builds out everything. Because once that foundation's set, then I've got the content that I can really start, reaching out to private, instrument, commercial, everyone, and providing hopefully a great training program where, you've got your CFI who will teach you the Backseat Pilot material or whatever they're using. And then, as the direction we're going, I think the logical next step is to supplement it with AI to where, you can take notes, learn in school, and then you go home and you review with an AI instructor who says, kind of records everything and then says, or knows where you are in the program, knows your flight experience, reviews the concepts with you, keeps a record of where you're excelling, where you're struggling, shoots that information over to the CFI who says, we need to review this stuff. Let's double back on these topics. And then in the plane, we'll, focus on these areas, and just kind of bringing it all together to give you an extra helping hand at home with the AI future, and then a solid flight instructor and flight school.
Yeah, that sounds like it would fill a void that's out there right now. As someone who has switched flight schools multiple times, whether that's twice through my training, and then, I've bounced around a bit in my career and flown for different outfits. There's the core, but it would be nice to have some stuff more standardized. So I do like the thought that, you could really kind of mold something around the same kind of concept of how to train to fly. Because I think sometimes, if you're a student, okay, I'm going to go with this flight instructor and this is what they're really focused on. And sometimes, you go up and a flight instructor can be, I don't want to say easy, but more relatively easy maybe than others. But when I go up with maybe one that's a little more challenging, but still understanding, you learn stuff more, and it makes you a better pilot. And so I love, one, all the detail that you put into it, because I do think going through the process, you're going to come out, because when you're up there, you want to make sure you know what you're doing.
Yep.
And so having people like you to make sure that they're in the back seat at least to help you along the way.
Exactly. That's the idea.
Yeah.
A little voice in the back of your head.
A little voice, yes. As long as it's, your voice, calm, soothing, yes,
Right.
I'll take it any day of the week. Is there anything about Backseat Pilot that I didn't ask you that you would like the listeners to know?
Oh, man, I think we covered pretty much everything. Covered all the topics, covered where we're hoping to go. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions or needs information or looking for guidance on anything, I've done the CFI route, I've done the airline route, regional and major,
Military,
done the Air Force route,
Right.
Air Force instructing. So if you got questions, reach out.
Yeah. So that's a good point. If people do have questions, and we'll put your website in the show notes so people can go make sure they can pull it from there. I know you mentioned, but it's www.backseatpilot.com.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the email info at thebackseatpilot.com.
And that would go to you. So if somebody wants to engage with you directly, the best way to do that is to go through the website.
Yeah, there's a contact form there, or just send an email to info@thebackseatpilot.com.
I love that.
I get them all. I'll respond to everything.
Do you still fly for fun? You ever?
I haven't recently, but now that the Air Force stuff, so the Air Force instructing kept me current. That instructor check ride satisfied the FAA CFI requirements, so that kept me current, and kept my instruction going. But now that I'm out, I've started looking into different options, and flying with guys and seeing what they're flying and where to go and what to do. And
do you find yourself up at Oshkosh every now and then, or
I need to get up there.
You haven't been?
No, not yet.
Oh no, that's a good spot to go and talk about Backseat Pilot.
Yeah,
they have such good.
Take a break from updating lesson plans.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe just maybe in the month of July, just take a break. Everybody will they'll give you a pass. I mean, it's the Mecca, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Make your trek to Oshkosh. I actually had the pleasure of having a meeting yesterday with the manager up there. He's a nice guy named Jim. And he was kind enough this last air show. I've only been up there twice now because you have a better excuse than I do. I grew up in the Midwest and I never made it up there. And I always felt guilty about that because people would be like, oh, and I was like, oh, I've never gone.
Yeah.
Like, how are you really a pilot? I'm like, no, I'll go, I swear. But it's an awesome show, and it's nice too because like in our day jobs, right? A lot of times, whether yourself work for an airline or me working for an airport, you get so engrossed in other stuff that's part of the job, but it's the job, and so it's nice to get out and just experience. Like out of here, some days I'll take the plane up just to, I don't want to say relax, but if you go up and just kind of experience, the majesty of flight itself, it's always very fun. What would be your favorite aircraft if you get one?
Oh, I was talking to the guy I was flying with yesterday. It's the P-51.
Oh, P-51. Okay, well, that's a good aircraft.
It's an easy one. Just probably the most beautiful plane ever designed, in my opinion. And watching that thing fly and the power it has, granted, you have to respect that power in that aircraft.
Oh. Well, so it's interesting, and I can't say that I verified this ever, but I worked for an FBO in Florida, and the owner bought a P-51.
Oh, cool.
I'm probably going to E Plurus Unum, I think was the name of it.
Awesome.
But the flight instructor told me, and you may know, he told me this, I didn't verify it, but he said when you're taking off, you can't use full power because the rotation of the engine will spin the aircraft over.
I've heard that rumor.
Okay.
I don't know if it's true.
All right. Okay. I was there, but I fly out here right now. I'm 172s, and my last year I've been thinking, I'm going to get a 182. I'm a little bit of a heavier person. I'm like, I need some better CG in that thing. And then I went up in a Waco, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And so I've talked about this in the last couple episodes, but I've been working with groups like AOPA. They've been kind enough. The Weaver Aircraft Company is what Waco. At first, I was like Waco, and they're like Waco, Texas. No, it's Waco. So I got schooled on that very quickly. But it's one of those things where for me, I was just like, this is the type of flying I love, like open cockpit. Just it was so much fun. So I'm hoping my plans, spring or summer, to purchase one. And again, it's just kind of that. And even when I was up in Alaska, I was like, they kind of still treat you like an adult here. You go, even Anchorage, literally my Uber driver drove me across the taxiway.
Oh, wow.
To get into Lake Hood. I don't know if you ever find yourself up there with United.
I was just a couple weeks ago.
You were, okay. And so, you get out to everybody seems like in their backyard, they have a husky or something, They say, I think the claim to fame is like 92% of the land in Alaska you can just land on.
That's amazing.
I know. It was so, I'm glad to hear that you're getting back into flying. Now, I'm assuming when you fly recreation, you'll fly at Chicago Executive Airport.
Of course, yeah. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
What would be your closest airport to you? Would it be like Aurora or?
I think it's here.
Is it
I'm
here?
not positive. I haven't done the math. But it's very close if it's
There's a lot of really good airports around Chicago, besides obviously your day job one. Yeah, right, your day job one.
Yeah.
But it is, so it's a great spot for aviation. I loved our conversation today. I really did. And I love what you're trying. I shouldn't say trying to, what you are doing here for students that are getting into this industry, because it is complicated and hard, and rightfully so, because it's complicated stuff. But when someone like you comes in and offers guidance, leadership, some humor behind it too, I think it helps, because I get people all the time that will, we go to the high school or something, they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not Einstein. And, it's like, well, you don't have to be Einstein. You just have to have commitment to want to be in the industry. I mean, obviously there's tough stuff you have to get through, but it's funny because you mentioned a story earlier on where they're like, yeah, when you go in the military, right? No, you're too old.
Yeah.
And you run into some of those gruff people, and, unfortunately, if you run into the wrong ones early on, it could shut you down,
Right.
And so I love meeting people like you that are open about it, honest about it, but give people hope to get through the process and guidance to get through the process. Because at the end of the day, those type of people go a lot further for our industry. So
Awesome.
I commend you on what you're doing here, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, really kind words. I appreciate it. And yeah, just trying to keep the ball rolling and keep making things better and better. And I guess I think kind of to sum up everything that we talked about there, it all just keeps coming back to, and I don't remember where I heard this quote, but I think it was on a podcast somewhere. It's just hard work consistently for a long time, and nothing, especially in aviation, is easy and free and quick. And if it is, question,
Yes.
I don't know if that's something you want to be involved in. It is.
Yes.
If you want to be good, it's hard work consistently for a long time, and you keep that mentality, you keep pushing forward.
Well, I'm just going to go with that's a Nate quote. We'll just say it's yours. You can own it.
I'll take it, yeah. Someone will come for it sooner or later.
Somebody will. Just get out and trademark it right now.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
URL on that one. Well, Nate, thank you so much for being on Destination Aviation, and thank you for being our second in person.
Oh, it was great. Thanks so much for
right.
having me, the invite. It was outstanding talking to you and all your listeners. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Nate. Well, listeners, that was another amazing conversation. I feel so fortunate getting to do this podcast. I was talking with somebody the other day that it really gives me an opportunity to get to know and speak with people that I probably never would have an opportunity really to just within my industry. And Nate is definitely one of those people. So thank you so much, Nate, for being on the show. Truly appreciate it. We have some cool interviews coming up still with some amazing guests. Probably some other episodes where you're just listening to yours truly, because we do get the comments and that people, they like their stories. It's kind of like my mom and her soap operas. They like their stories. Of course, I don't think there's that many soap operas left now. Maybe what? Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful. I don't know any other ones. It's potential there's some out there. But, you get on TikTok and stuff, you can see real life soap operas these days. Speaking of which, get on ours and take some look at the videos that we put on from Alaska. Got to get up in a beaver de Havilland. I got a comment back from someone that said, you must be from Chicago because I put the de Havilland in there. So they're probably right. And in the sense of I am from Chicago, not naturally, but it is now my new home. So got some cool stuff there. Been having some conversations about the biplane and what we're going to do there. So that's really great. I'm actually going to go out for a flight tonight. I think about going up to Janesville and just seeing what they have going on up there. Maybe do some touch and goes. Maybe go to a restaurant. Who knows? It's a nice night for flying. Looks like it's going to be 10 miles of visibility, clouds at 7,500 feet, and smooth sailing. 6 knots, I think, is what's being reported right now. So hopefully for all of you out there that fly, you'll get a chance to go up as well. So talked a little bit about that. I'll be having an episode I put out when I'm in Las Vegas. I'm going to be in Las Vegas for the National Business Aviation Association's annual trade show, BACE. I forget now what it's we'll look it up. Hold on a minute. Okay, now it's back to responding like I just know all the answers all the time with the help of my magic rectangle box in my hand. But it's the Business Aviation Convention and Exhibition. So get to see some of my friends out there in Las Vegas. Looking forward to that. Might go over to the Sphere and see the Wizard of Oz show. I've been out there before, and I saw the Eagles, and I saw U2, and those are really cool. I did kind of think it was, I don't know, U2 had the video, Streets Have No Name, where the actual video is filmed in Las Vegas, but they didn't use that. And I always thought that was a miss. But what do I know? I'm not a rock star. I'm just a podcast person. I'm just speaking to you through your speaker right now. But no, lots of cool stuff coming up there. If you have any stories, or like with Nate, if you want to pitch a future guest for the show, please drop us a message at dapodcast85@gmail.com. That's where you can find all things related to aviation. And yours truly is at that email. So if you want to, again, pitch a future show, future idea, would love to do that. Love getting the messages in, love speaking with people, even when it's criticism. We always say that on here, but even when it's criticism. But no, I think that's all we have for today's show. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you down the runway.